Hello, and welcome to our second webinar in the series, Achieving Measurable Collective Impact with Results-Based Accountability. We're happy that you've joined us, and we'd like to start off right away by inviting you to tell us a little bit about yourself. My name is Dietrich Epps. I'm a partner and senior consultant with the Results Leadership Group, and I'm the host of this webinar series. Along with me on the call, I'll have some of my teammates joining us from Results Leadership Group as well. And Eileen, I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dietrich. Hi, I'm Eileen Finn. I'm also with Results Leadership Group, and I will be assisting Dietrich in this webinar this week with the polls and questions.
Thanks so much. As you can see, we're asking you to take a moment to check in and introduce yourselves a little bit to us. You'll see on your screen now a poll that asks you to tell a little bit about yourself. Are you new to results-based accountability? Are you new to collective impact? Have you practiced results-based accountability in the past? Are you currently part of a collective impact initiative? And are you of a group that is combining the two? You've been able to apply RBA to a collective impact initiative. We're going to take a few moments and allow people to take the poll and to join onto the webinar. So you're going to have a quiet space for a moment just to allow people to join in and to take the poll. I'll also share a bit of housekeeping. If you notice on the right-hand side of your screen, there is a GoToWebinar panel. And it is in this panel that you'll have a chance to ask questions. You'll also respond to the polls in this column. So throughout the webinar, we'll be asking you to respond to the polls and to ask questions. So this is your chance to do that. Also, you might want to have some information handy. We will be giving you some emails and some websites that you'll be able to use in the future. Please know, I'll share it now as well as at the end of the webinar, you will have the opportunity to receive the slides as well as a recording of the webinar. We will send you a brief survey at the end of the webinar, and part of that follow-up to that survey will also be sharing the slides and the recording to the webinar. So we'll continue to give you some time to take the poll. We hope you're having a great day today, wherever you might be. We appreciate your joining us. Our objective for today's webinar are to support you who are familiar with RBA or with results-based accountability to actually deepen your understanding of results-based accountability as it applies to the conditions of collective impact. Today's focus is specifically on one of the conditions that is called shared measurement system. And we're going to, by the end of the webinar, you'll understand how RBA can be applied to a shared measurement system. We'll distinguish between population versus performance data as a part of that shared measurement system, and we'll also briefly touch on equity matters and look at the importance of disaggregating data in order to target specific vulnerable populations. As a part of the webinar, we'll be talking about how you can join a community of practice and engage in shared learning around this topic of achieving measurable results using collective impact. So just to give you a little bit of information about me and who I am, my name is Dietrich Epps again, and in order to meet today's objective, I am going to be sharing with you about results-based accountability and collective impact through my personal lens. Part of building a community of practice means that we all come to the table as co-learners. And I appreciate you coming to this webinar today to just hear a little bit about how you can apply RBA to your collective impact initiative. I'll be sharing with you about my role as a community leader, as a results-based facilitator, as an executive coach for leaders from both organizations and communities, as a human services administrator and consultant, and as a program evaluator. This is the lens that I'll be bringing to the conversation on today. I also am asking throughout the webinar that you share, as an emerging community of practice, that you share about your experiences as well. We have participants that have registered from globally, including Australia, Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and across the United States. So we're going to go ahead and close the poll now and share with you a little bit about who is made up of, who you're connecting with across the globe. 27% of the participants on this webinar are new to results-based accountability. So about 1 out of 4 of you are new to RBA. About 18% are new to collective impact. So that means about almost 1 out of 5 of you are new to collective impact. 22% have practiced RBA. 16% are part of a collective impact initiative, and 16% have applied RBA to collective impact initiatives. Thanks so much, all of you who took time to weigh in around this topic. This will be a part of our ongoing conversation so that we can hear back from you as you respond to what you're hearing. And thank you also for taking time to continue with the webinar as we engage in the conversations. I also want to share with you that we are developing a community of practice for RBA and collective impact. A community of practice is basically groups of people who share a concern or who want to connect around something that you want to learn about or know how to do better as we interact. The domain that we'll be connecting around is around RBA and collective impact, and we're just hoping that you'll be interested in continuing these conversations as a community, which we would engage in joint activities and discussions or other ways of sharing information. And then the practice is to develop a shared repertoire of resources, experiences, and various ways of addressing common problems that we might have around implementing collective impact with RBA. So this is by the work of Lave and Etienne Wagner, and hopefully you are familiar with communities of practice. If not, we'll be sharing more and more about that as time goes forward. So let's jump into the 2 areas that we're looking at together, results-based accountability and collective impact. This is a general overview of results-based accountability's turn the curve thinking. On today, we're going to focus on a result that is a part of the work in Maryland and in Baltimore City in particular as an example, but this turn-the-curve thinking has been applied across the globe in various ways and in various sectors. And this is the basic format where you look at an indicator baseline or a trend line to determine how are we doing as a community in a quantitative way around achieving that result. Why does the data look the way that it does? What's the story behind the data? Who are some partners that can help to address what we've learned about that story? And what are some options that would work to improve the data? These options could include evidence-based practices. They might include innovative ideas that are coming out of community. But in the end, you look at what works for your community, and then you create a comprehensive community action plan with a budget that tells what you propose that the community implement in order to improve the results. This is a basic summary of the core foundation of RBA. And the author of Results-Based Accountability is Mark Freedman. He has written a book, Trying Hard is Not Good Enough, and there's a reference to that that you can get at the end of this presentation. The second part of our conversation, we will engage around the 5 conditions of collective impact. Each of the webinars will focus on a specific condition. On last week, we looked at a common agenda. And on today, we'll talk about a shared measurement system. Over the next 3 weeks, we will focus on the remaining conditions of collective impact, understanding that equity is at the core of all of these conditions. And so the area of equity will be addressed beginning on today, but we will continue to talk about equity and its implementation in collective impact initiatives using RBA. There are 2 key principles to results-based accountability. The first principle is starting with the ends and working backwards to the means. So in the previous result that we just used, that would be the end result that you're looking to achieve on behalf of the community. And then you work backwards to how you will achieve that result. What are the strategies that you will put in place in order to know that you've achieved the result? And the second principle is data-driven, transparent decision-making. Today's condition will focus on this second principle of data-driven, transparent decision-making. Last week we spoke about the common agenda, and for those of you who are just joining on today, I'll briefly state that we mentioned and went over that the common agenda has 2 applications. The first one is that there needs to be an explicit result statement that expresses the desired condition of well-being for your community partnerships to work together. And the second part of this application of common agenda is that there is a co-development of a comprehensive community action plan with community-wide strategies and partners to implement the plan. I wanted to take a moment and touch base with you. On last week's webinar, we did ask if you would go back into your communities, if you had any meetings between last week to this week, but that you would go back into your communities and ask about the result statements that exist currently, or if you would practice using a result statement or creating a result statement with your community partnerships. So I'm going to take a moment and ask you for some feedback for those of you who were able to do that. And we'll ask you this, for those of you who are on the webinar today, and if you had a chance to go back and ask, are you working with a multi-sector community partnership that is focused on improving results? So we'll ask you more about that. And then also we're going to ask you to think about, as you look at the results that you're achieving, have you brought together a common agenda towards achieving that result? So those are 2 things that we talked about on last week as a part of the common agenda. And these are some examples of some plans that we discussed. We're going to go further in the conversation today, looking at the plan on the left, which was Baltimore's 5-year action plan for achieving school readiness that was written around 2005, and looking at over the decade what has happened towards looking at data for all Baltimore City children enter kindergarten ready to learn. So when we talk about looking at data, we're going to think about the shared measurement system and what is a shared measurement system. So the condition of a shared measurement system, according to the Collective Impact Forum, means that you're agreeing to track progress in the same way, which allows for continuous improvement. So as you think about that and think about your own communities and coming together with the results and measurements, have you created a plan that is based upon data that your community partners have agreed to improve the same data? Before, and we're about to take a poll, especially around that question, but before we take that poll, I'm going to ask you to think about the work that you've done and the plan that you've created. Does it focus on population accountability or performance accountability? At the population level, your plan, the comprehensive community action plan, would actually be about the well-being of whole populations. That could be a city, a county, a country, or a region. Any of these areas would be the whole population. So does your comprehensive community action plan actually have a clear result for that community at the whole population level? And then have you agreed to focusing in on a limited number of headline measures towards the achieving of that result. And when I say a limited number, we would recommend 3 to 5 measures. A little later on, I'm going to talk about how important it is to limit the number of measures. But for right now, let's just get a little feedback from those of you who have implemented this selection of indicators for the whole population. I want to distinguish it from performance accountability, which would mean that you have a plan that looks at the well-being of client populations, and those clients might be at a program level, an agency level, or even a service system. Perhaps you are working within a system of care and you're looking at the well-being of the clients that you all work with together, and you're improving that system of care. That's actually a little bit different than this first part of accountability, which is the population accountability level. So Eileen, let's go ahead and open up that poll. Are you working with multi-sector community partners that are focused on improving a limited number of headline measures? Perhaps no more than 5 measures. It could be 1 measure, or it could be up to 5. Let's take time now for the poll to go ahead and take place. Thank you for those of you who are taking a moment to check in around the work that you're doing and with multi-sector community partners. There's some examples. You might be working with a substance abuse prevention coalition, and you might be using data around the percent of self-report, around the percent of youth that have self-reported to abusing substances, or you might be looking at some other type of data at a population level if you are using this type of multi-sector community partnership work. We've had the poll open. About 70% of you have voted, and according to the poll, 65% of you have stated that you are working with a limited number of headline measures, which is fantastic. About 35% have stated that you are not. So let's talk about how we can move forward with that and apply RBA to this work of having a limited number of headline measures. And once you have those headline measures, how do you go about improving them together? All right. So the first step, there are 2 applications of RBA to a shared measurement system. The first one is to distinguish between population measures, which we call indicators, and performance measures when you're looking at a shared measurement system. Oftentimes there is a blending of measurements that are community measures along with client measures. And the first part of having a shared measurement system is being sure that as a partnership, you're looking at population measures for communities. The second part of this shared measurement system with RBA would be to look at continuous improvement at all of these levels that are noted here. You want to make sure that as a community, you're working together and focusing in on the population improvement of specific indicators. You also want to look at the service system that you're working in, and perhaps looking to see if you have common performance measures across your service system so that you're looking at similar measures of success for your clients and having ways to improve the well-being of the clients maybe that you service together or that you service individually. And the last area of continuous improvement would be around program performance improvement. That's for those program managers on the call that are specifically looking at the clients that you are working with and having an improvement, continuous improvement for those clients in your program. So these are the 2 applications for a shared measurement system. Within RBA, as I've noted, at the population level, you want to have your results and your indicators that are aligned so that all of your partners that are coming to the table have a clear view and a vision for what you're working to improve, and you have an indicator that you're also focused on improving. This example has 1 the obesity rate, it's always helpful. The lower the number of indicators that you have, the easier it will be for your partners to work together towards improving it. Because we'll talk next week about mutually reinforcing activities, but you can be sure that your activities are aligned to improve that indicator. And then just in terms of definitions, I'm reiterating that the definitions that we're using of performance measure is a measure of how well a program, agency, or service system is working. We'll talk today in more detail about how do you look at these performance measures, how much did we do, how well did we do it, or is anyone better off, as a part of the shared measurement system. So there are some examples for those of you who are looking for community-level data so that you can measure success at the population level. I'm going to, this is one example, Ready at 5, is an organization in Maryland that houses school readiness data. A lot of the work that I've been able to support communities with across the country has been around early childhood. And I recognize that one of the challenges for early childhood partnerships is that they do not have a common measure across the state that they can use to align their the way that they're measuring success. Ready at 5 has not only been able to support the collection of the data from each jurisdiction in Maryland, but they've also been able to share in a very and facilitate a very clear fashion how do you communicate that data at every level of the state, and also with those parents and providers that the data is also so important that they are informed and a part of improving. There's also another example, the Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance. This is a website for that alliance. Some of you may be fortunate enough that within your community you have a group that is dedicated to collecting data and sharing data with community partners. That's not always the case. I'll also mention the Annie E. Casey Foundation has Kids Count partners across the United States. That's another source of data for for those of you who are interested in children and youth and data around that. And you also have, for those of you who are interested in health data, you have the Health Indicators Warehouse. And it is just that. It is a large resource where you can get community-level data, and you're able to access it on a variety of health topics. So in the United States, there is that availability of data. For those of you who are joining the webinar from abroad, outside of the United States, if you can share by email some of the sources of community data that exists in your community that is similar to these broad collectors of data, that would be fantastic, and we'll share it. The important part of this work is that when you have large sources of data, you want to make sure to use the right data in your community partnerships that provides useful feedback to the most participants. Oftentimes, data is available, but it's not necessarily directly aligned with the result that you've selected. And communities find themselves using the data simply because it has been collected and it is available. But you want to take time to make sure you're not, that you are not trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. So if your result is very specific, you want to work as much as possible to find data that aligns with your results and not simply use the data because it happens to be available. Work, and we'll talk about having a data develop agenda as well to get data that is a good fit for your community partnership. So as you think about selecting indicators, I've given you a couple of resources for school readiness data, examples of resources of school readiness data and health data. There are many other types of data that you could consider when you're looking at the well-being of children, adults, families, and communities. Within results-based accountability, we have a criteria for selecting indicators from a large warehouse or a large set, a data set. The first criteria is looking at communication power. Does the indicator communicate to a broad range of audiences? And those audiences would include legislators, they would include those who have the lived experience in the community, they would include funders, also clients, community stakeholders. All of these individuals, you want to consider them when you're looking at choosing an indicator. The second criteria is about proxy power. And the definition of proxy power is that it says something of this indicator or this measure would say something of central importance about the result. When you look at the indicator, does it clearly connect to the result in a way that you can understand that, yes, when we improve this data, we're actually moving towards improving the result. Another part of proxy power talks about data trends. When you're looking at data trends, does the indicator bring along the data heard? Is there other data that would also, you could look at that data to say that if this data improves, then we also know other things about other associated indicators that trend along with this indicator. This will help you by choosing an indicator with proxy power. It actually helps you to reduce the number of indicators that you have as headline indicators. The last criteria that we'll have with RBA is quality data available on a timely basis. That's data power. Is there data available that will be tracked, hopefully on an annual basis when you're talking about a population indicator? Sometimes it might be every other year, but you do want to ensure that once you select this indicator, that there is a high likelihood that it will continue to be tracked over time. Because after all, this is what the community partnership will use to determine its own success. I want to take a moment and reiterate the point that I just made about the success of a community partnership. Community partnerships, when you're looking at a shared measurement system, we use the language of population accountability to talk about that the members of this partnership are working together and they agree to take shared accountability for improving the data. So that as the data is released on an annual basis or however often it is released, that the community partners come together in ownership of that data to say we recognize that our work over the last year, over the last 2 years or 5 years should all go towards improving this data. That is an important part of a shared measurement system, that you agree to take accountability for improving it. So in order to make sure that your partners will all agree to common indicators with the shared measurement system, you want to think about how can you select those best indicators within the community. Well, you can look at the data that you have available and consider that data as candidate indicators. Let me take one step back. You can look at the measures that you would like to have as candidate indicators and look at, do you have the data to make those your primary or headline indicators? So lots of folks would love to have data in your community, and I'm sure you've had conversations about the data that you would prefer to have as a headline measure. And I'm using Children Enter Kindergarten Ready to Succeed because this is a consistent conversation globally about even with the World Health Organization looking at children, young children, and wanting them to be prepared to succeed by the age of 5 or 6 in their early years. So when you look at all the data or the measures that you would like to have, you want to think about rating those indicators in terms of communication power, proxy power, and data power. And you see the H, the M, and the L here simply references high, medium, or low. So as a group, you can sit down and have conversations to ask one another using your best information, again, having the at the table as well to participate in these conversations. What is the communication power? How would this communicate as an indicator with your network or your circle of influence? Would that be high communication power, medium, or low? And you want to do the same thing with proxy power and with data power. Oftentimes, communities think that you have good data, and when you go to rate the indicators, you may have several indicators that come up as high communication, high proxy, and high data power. Well, when you ask about is the data available today and can we create a trend line on that data, sometimes it switches to high communication power, high proxy power, and low data power because the data is not as accessible as one originally believed. In that case, you don't have to stop the work that you're doing and become a data community partnership. We recommend that with RBA, that a subset of your partners begin to become a data development committee so that you have an agenda that's very clear that these are the indicators that we want to get better data on. And a subset of your group can work very vigorously and very ardently to collect the data if it's available, or to identify the data gaps that are in your community. And that's an important part and an important piece of having a comprehensive community action plan. One of the benefits of using this process of selecting indicators is that it quickly becomes clear where you do and do not have data for your community. And the data development agenda can actually be included in your comprehensive community action plan so that the community members themselves and the funders within that community can begin to understand what data is needed to further understand what's happening in community. So the next part of this conversation will be about having an example of where this has been successful. And on last week, we spoke about having a common agenda, and I mentioned earlier Ready at 5, and they work with the Maryland State Department of Education to create a trend line for children entering school ready to learn. I like to look at this data because it's it shows the progress that can be made in a decade. And I'll quickly review it. The the purplish line shows where the children in Maryland who were fully ready to learn when entering kindergarten. It went from 49% to 82% over the course of time. The children who were approaching readiness went from 44% to 81%, and then, went from 44% to 15%. You'll notice that is the second line because many children who would have entered kindergarten fully ready, approaching readiness, were now entering fully ready to learn. And then the green line went from 7% to 3%. And these were those children that were the hard-to-reach children, but over the years you can see that less and less children were coming in at developing readiness and more were approaching or perhaps even fully ready to learn. So this is data that is regularly collected by the state of Maryland, and they have continued to make progress around the early learning years using a common shared measure that is consistent throughout the state. I want to take a moment here and pause to talk about the importance of disaggregating the data as a part of moving forward around equity. One of the important aspects of collective impact is having an equity lens and doing this work with keeping equity at the center of the work. And so I wanted to point out how Maryland has been able to, for quite some time, has been looking at disaggregating the data And this is an example of the county level disaggregated data, where you can see that in Baltimore City, 28% of children in 2001-2002 were assessed as fully ready to learn. And then at this time, when this data was taken for 2013-2014, 76% of Baltimore's kindergarten children were assessed as fully ready to learn. I use this as an example of how valuable it is to have a single indicator that all community partners can embrace. What happened in Baltimore City that enabled this dramatic result with oftentimes vulnerable populations? There was in the time that one of my experiences that I wanted to highlight, when in 2003 to 2004, the Leadership in Action program came together and was asked to look at this data. And at that time, I believe it was 27% of children were entering kindergarten ready to succeed. And this group of leaders came together in a committed fashion and looked at various strategies that would be in a comprehensive community action plan. And the partners included even children's museum leaders. It included non-traditional partners like the libraries, which is becoming more and more of a traditional partner, but specifically the head of the children's library department. So there were also the partners that were included that were from the health department and from local nonprofit organizations, from the Head Start program. So all of the partners came together and created a comprehensive plan towards achieving school readiness. This plan laid the foundation for future work, and you can see that work was a 5-year plan, but you can see that there have been sustained improvements in school readiness in Baltimore. Maryland continues to create a plan, not just a plan for improving school readiness, but Maryland State Department of Education continues to put out a school readiness report with data on how children are doing, and Ready at 5 takes the lead effort in that. You can see that it's this is the most recent one from May of 2015. You'll note that you can go on the Maryland School Readiness website and find out all the way back over the past 10 to 15 years different school readiness reports that have been implemented. This is the most recent report, and I wanted to share some information with you because Maryland is very transparent with the data, and part of having a shared measurement system is being transparent with the data. After all, when children come to kindergarten, they have benefited from multiple inputs into their well-being. And so Maryland State Department of Education is only one of the partners amongst a table of multi-sector partners that are working on school readiness that has allowed Maryland to go from good to great. The slides that I'm showing you now are actually put out by Ready at 5. They make the data transparent to the community in ways that you can access it and share it with the partners that are within each sphere of influence. So parents can have access to the data through, for example, parent-teachers associations or Head Start associations. So Maryland is moving from good to great with their work on school readiness. This is the early, now they have a kindergarten readiness assessment that they have moved to. It still goes from demonstrating readiness to approaching readiness to emerging readiness, but the children are being assessed now at a new level of learning when they enter kindergarten. And Maryland continues to look at the demographics for each jurisdiction. For those of you who are considering looking at a shared measurement system, the first step is to look at who are the people that you are focused on in your population. How many children are there? How many adults are there? How many older adults are there that you're working with? It will be very helpful to begin by knowing the number of people that you are looking to impact. And then within your target population, how many people are within the target population that you hope to serve that are from those hard-to-reach communities, hard-to-reach areas. In Maryland, you'll see that there were different, the data was disaggregated by ethnicity, by gender, as well as by English language learners and free and reduced price meals. So that it's very clear, and the strategies can be directed towards these specific individuals. This is some data that looks at Baltimore City resident results and shows that 49% of African American kindergartens demonstrated full readiness, and it also shows that 50% of females demonstrated kindergarten readiness. Again, this is with the new kindergarten readiness assessment that was just used in 2014. So you'll notice that there have been some changes in the data, and I'm going to take some time in a moment to talk about the impact of changes in data, but I'll share with you a little bit more that Baltimore also disaggregates, and Maryland also disaggregates by income, so you can look at how you might target service strategies to children with low income and in other areas. So as you think about the work that you're doing together, you can see that Maryland has a clear result and has one indicator that all of the state is looking at in terms of improvement. That is a shared measurement system on steroids, right? So, I mean, this is really looking at why the results have been so dramatic and so significant for Maryland. I note here that the assessment tool, although the assessment tool has changed to a kindergarten readiness assessment, Maryland continues to look at the well-being of young children. So many of you in your indicators for your shared measurement system have an assessment included in your indicator. I've noticed that in my experiences working with different communities. I recommend that you do not include the assessment tool as a part of your measure, but simply include what it is that you are measuring. And of course, that's separate from the measures of how well a program, organization, or service system is doing. So making sure that you're distinguishing between these two areas. Let's take a moment now to think about when you look at a shared measurement system. So you have the community results, you have the indicators, and the story in that community behind the why the indicators data looks the way that it does. You have the strategies that are being implemented on the ground as programs, and then you're looking at programs who have program performance measures. This is another way of looking at a shared measurement system and data-driven, transparent decision-making. I mentioned this slide briefly at the end of the last webinar. I'm going to take a moment now to talk more about what does it look like when you move from a comprehensive community action plan to actually implementing the strategies on the ground as programs. So the programs that are a part of the community are looking at providing direct services for clients. And whether that be a strategy that is a program that is working with the adults or a program working with children or any part of the strategy, you want to make sure that you have ways of measuring the success of that program. And you should have transparency not just with the nonprofit organizations, not just with the local entities, but at all levels of strategy implementation. There should be data that drives the decision-making amongst all of the partners at the local, federal, business, civic, and nonprofit arena, so that at each level there's transparency around the data that impacts the strategies that in turn improves the data towards achieving the community results. This is a schematic that looks at results-based accountability and a shared measurement system around indicator data as well as around program and service system data. We also have a results scorecard that can be used that you can connect through the cloud, and you can even at your own computer and at your own leisure, you'll be able to have a chance. You can go to our website, Results Scorecard, and I'll give you some more information on that in a moment. But this very schematic exemplifies the importance of having a shared measurement system and aligning your work amongst your partners. This is another look at an advanced view of the relationship between indicators and performance measures. You'll notice at this level, at the level of the service system, it refers to a client population. As the service system client population approaches the total population, inside this circle, you have the service system of perhaps like an after-school system, an early childhood system, where it's mainly the partners and the providers that are offering services to a unique set of individuals that would be within this red circle. So it could be a system of care, it could be an agency that offers services to specific clients, or it could be a program that offers services to specific clients. At each of these levels, we refer to the measures as performance measures because you're really looking at how is that group doing at meeting the needs of the clients within their that they're providing direct services to. Again, as the service system client population approaches this total population, this is when the performance measures begin to move from looking at client well-being to really looking at the role of the total population in having an indicator to show the well-being of the population as a whole. So at this level, where you see the yellow dots, we're going to talk more about these quadrants, but we're really looking at how are the clients better off. And that is a performance measure. And as that same measure, for example, the obesity rate, you could have the obesity rate within a specific program at a health department, but the obesity, and that would be considered a performance measure, but the obesity rate at a population level would be considered an indicator of well-being for that community. So depending upon the population that you're looking at, you may have the same measure, but it is called a performance measure within RBA so that we can be sure to distinguish between performance accountability and population accountability. This is one of the strengths of RBA and collective impact when looking at a shared measurement system. I want to take a moment and talk about how do you select performance measures to determine client impact within a shared measurement system. The first thing you want to think about amongst your partners is who are our clients and what services do we provide to those clients, and what is the desired impact of those services on the clients, and how are we doing at achieving the desired impact. So collective impact is really, when we're talking about population accountability, we're looking at impacting indicators. At the client impact level, we're looking at impacting the clients and performance measures. For example, you have, as I mentioned earlier, you have how much did we do as a question that you could ask about a program or an agency or a service system. How well did we do it? These two questions speak to the efforts that have been put out by the owners of that program or that service system. The last question is anyone better off speaks to the effect of that program on the individual served. Were they better off in any way? So the first question, how much did we do? Many of you probably have data on this area of the activities that you're doing with the clients that you serve. And then you list out the clients or the customers and the types of activities that you're doing with those clients or customers. The second question is about how well did we do it. So you can look at how well are you implementing the services that you have been charged to do along with other partners perhaps in your community or within your own organization. Some of these measures at the top would relate more to your work than others, but for example, what % of your staff is fully trained to implement the services that you're offering? This would talk about the efforts of your program. So how much did we do is one question, how well did we do it? And then the final question that we are asking when you're thinking about shared measurement around a program, agency, or service system is anyone better off? The people that receive those services, how have they changed in terms of skills or knowledge or attitude or behavior or circumstances? You see some examples here that are specifically related to early childhood. So if you're working with the clients who are child care providers, how have they improved their skills or their knowledge? If you're talking about the parents and strategies with parents, how have they improved their attitude toward parenting or their behaviors around parenting? I have some acronyms on the side to help you remember how well did we do it. Could be TACs, like timeliness, attendance, customer service, completion, and standards. How do we do at meeting the standards for implementing this program or strategy? And then the acronym for the Better Off measure is BACS. How do we do in terms of improving behavior, attitude, circumstances, knowledge, or skill? So in the last session, there were a couple of folks on the survey specifically asked about how do you measure program performance. So I wanted to make sure to include this as a part of the shared measurement system conversation on today. So I'm going to ask each of you to take a moment now for our next poll. And the question that I want to ask you is specifically about some of your contributions to a shared measurement system within your community. And the question that we would have for you is, do you have common performance measures that are used in a service system for improving client well-being? That simply is asking the question, do you have any measures that are really looking at apples-to-apples types of measurement, where within your shared measurement system, you have developed common measures that if a child is in one program or another, or if a person is looking at substance abuse in one program to the other program, you have similar ways of measuring success for your service system. You have a shared measurement system that you're looking at improving data for the clients that you serve. So we'll give you a few more moments to take that poll and to answer that question, just so that we can engage in shared learning and that we can all have a sense for what is happening in communities that are looking to improve well-being for children, adults, and families. Again, as a part of the shared measurement system, one of the important parts when using RBA is distinguishing between population and performance accountability. Our question earlier was about indicators at the population level. This question is about shared measurement at the performance accountability level. Do you have common performance measures that are used in a service system for improved client well-being? Thank you so much for those of you who have shared information on the poll. And it almost is about 50-50. 45% said yes, and 55% have stated that no, you do not have common measures. And this aligns with my experience in communities. Actually, it seems those of you who are on the call, probably more of you have common performance measures than has been my experience. About 63% of you weighed in on this question, and it shows that there is a challenge in having common measures. It is helpful to have common measures because then you can actually look at this turn-the-curve thinking together across your service system. So, for example, if you have a program and some of your partners at the table are implementing a similar program with other clients, you can look at that performance measure together and tell the story of why your data looks the way that it does with the clients that you're serving. And then you can also talk about who can help to improve the data for your clients so that there's well-being across the board for your client base. You can talk about options that would work to improve the data, and you can develop a quality improvement action plan along with your partners so that more and more of your clients are better off. So I just want to take a moment and accentuate the difference between the end result and having a program that has data is very beneficial at the local level, so that across the community, as you're working together with your partners, you can encourage those of you, 55% said no, you do not have common measures, but 45% said yes. So those of you who do have common measures can influence and encourage your partners to use data to drive their decision making and to having common performance measures so that you can improve your client outcomes. This is performance accountability. But at both levels, it's important to use the turn the curve to ask at the indicator population level, if the indicators are not improving, you can ask yourself, as partners, are we doing the right thing? And at the performance accountability level, if your client outcomes are not being measured or you're showing they're not having improvement, you can ask, are we doing the things that we're doing right? So these are the two ways that shared accountability aligns with the RBA work and shared measurement system. Some of the challenges that I have observed around this work is the first one, having a standard measure that aligns several sectors. So at the population level, it's sometimes challenging to have one single measure that all of the partners agree to. So again, up to 3 to 5 measures can be used to look at population level accountability. Also, there's some challenge in accessing disaggregated data on vulnerable populations. And then some challenges are around comparing apples to apples with performance measures across several organizations. We're going to take a moment now and just ask you, if you are a program manager or director and you're looking at client outcomes, this last question pertains to you. When you're looking at your program, are you able to compare apples to apples with performance measures across other organizations, or are you even do you have measures to show if your clients are better off? And that would be this measure here. So if you are a program manager or director, are you measuring client outcomes to determine if clients are better off after receiving services? We'll start that poll now. For those of you who might be executive directors, you can answer on behalf of a program manager or director that basically within your work, do you have client outcomes to determine if clients are better off after receiving services? We found that this is the most challenging performance measure to have. Oftentimes there is information on how much did we do and how well did we do it, but this one is often a challenge to get that better off measure. So we'll keep the poll open for a few more seconds just to give folks a chance to answer. And thank you guys for answering and taking time to share information about what's happening in your community. And we'll go ahead and close the poll. So basically, it looks like 60% of you said yes, you do have measures that are showing that your clients are better off and how you have those program performance measures. And we also noticed that 40% said no, that you do not. So that is an area that we can also support in terms of shared measurement, is first having measures at the program level. The last area that I'd like to go over with you is having technology to support a shared measurement system. Katie and Kramer emphasized from the very beginning how useful it can be to have technology to support a shared measurement system. We do have the results scorecard, and you can check out our website. And if you'd like more information, you can indicate that on your survey that you take after the session. But we do want to invite you to learn more about the results scorecard. The Promise Neighborhoods Institute has the Promise Scorecard that is our results-based accountability software for looking at, in a transparent way, at data We also, in Baltimore and in Maryland, the local management boards are using results-based accountability and the results scorecard. This is a trend line and a screenshot of the results scorecard that uses the turn the curve to bring together all of the story of the community as well as the partners, what works, and the strategies that are being implemented to improve the data. For example, this one is the infant mortality rate data. So today's conversation has been about program performance accountability more than the previous conversation last week, which was at the population level and creating a comprehensive plan. A shared measurement system can go to all of these levels, from population to performance accountability, and can even, the shared measurement system can even go into the organizational work around budgeting and management. How can you share, even as having a results-based organization, how your organization can improve around measures of finance, measures of IT, and measures of performance for your clients. So RBA can be used at all levels in terms of having shared measurement systems. One of the challenges of an organization is having accountability and performance measures in each area and each division of the work, and not just the measures around client success. RBA can be used as a shared measurement system in this area as well. So we're nearing the end of our time together in terms of the presentation, and we're about to move to a question and answer. I want to just acknowledge the portions of these materials draw upon the work of Mark Freedman, John Kenya, and Mark Kramer, and the Ready at 5 organization in Baltimore, Maryland. So I'd like to invite you at this time to send in any questions that you have based upon what has been shared today about collective impact and results-based accountability. As you send your questions in, Eileen and I will take your questions and we'll share with you about our responses. But as you are inserting your questions, we'd like to invite you as a reminder that we're developing a community of practice around RBA and collective impact. And if you're interested in sharing an example of a success or a challenge that you've had while using RBA or in implementing collective impact to drive results, please email us, and we will be sure to respond and to consider including your work, or even you can share your perspective as a partner in this work on an upcoming webinar. So we'll take time, Eileen, now to answer questions.
Okay, we have a question. So thank you for providing these webinars as a resource. I'm wondering what information is proprietary for RBA and collective impact. Who owns the proprietary information, and how can consultants be involved with facilitating RBA and collective impact initiatives?
Okay, so this is a similar question to what we had last week, so I'm gonna do a shorter answer because there is a longer answer on last week's webinar recording. But there are, and you can find out more information about the proprietary information on RBA on the ResultsLeadership.org website. But after reviewing the information of RBA and learning RBA, even being self-taught, you can implement RBA and facilitate results-based accountability conversations. So if you are interested in being a facilitator and being taught and trained as a results-based facilitator of RBA in communities, you can certainly contact us, and we can offer, for example, at our upcoming conference in Baltimore in June, I will be doing a training as a pre-conference event on facilitating RBA conversations. That would be a great follow-up to this series of webinars. So for those of you who want to be highly skilled in facilitating these conversations, we do offer training, and that is what it takes to facilitate these types of community conversations that have various dynamics of political dynamics, race, class, gender, equity dynamics, and just tension around data in general. Since today we're talking about a shared measurement system, there is a skill set that comes along with effective facilitation of these conversations. And we can talk, you can check out our website for the proprietary information if you want more details than that. In terms of collective impact, they are free. They're freely sharing their information. There's a collective impact forum, but they also have conferences and other webinars that you can join from that, and you can get more information about the proprietary information from them.
Okay, our next question is, what is a reasonable time frame for seeing successful result outcomes in a population collective impact?
That is a good question in terms of a reasonable time frame. I have personal experience that I'll share with you about the work in Baltimore when we were first invited into this type of work back in 2003, I believe it was. We were asked to improve the data for Baltimore City's children from 27%, and we were asked to do it as quickly as possible within the year. So we actually looked at the data the following year to try to make improvements as rapidly as possible. That is the exception to the rule. I think for the most part, with population change, you probably are going to be looking at probably 3 to 5 years when you're looking at impact on the data. But if you can bring together a strong community partnership that has multi-sector partners similar to what happened in Maryland, we actually began to focus on those children that were 0 to 5, but began first with those 4-year-olds that we knew were entering kindergarten the next year. So we were very targeted in our strategies, and we did begin to see change sooner than population level impact tends to happen. The next question.
Okay, that's all the questions that we have.
Okay, thank you. So
wait. We've got one more. Oh, never mind. It's not a question.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So I invite you then to our next webinar, which is Thursday, March the 17th from 1 to 2:30, and it will be on RVA and mutually reinforcing activities. We invite you to join us, and I'll also share with you that your feedback is very important to us. You will be receiving a survey email that will ask you to fill out that survey. The email will be from Marquez Frazier at ResultsLeadership.org, and so you may want to check your spam folder if you can't find it. So please take the survey. We will make copies of today's slides available after completion of the survey, and you will also receive an email link to view the recording as soon as that becomes available. So we want to stay connected to you, and we want to hear back from you. Thank you so much for your time and your participation, and we wish you a wonderful day, evening, or just in general, a wonderful time before we see you again next week on our webinar. Thanks so much.